been a long time since I've done one of these, but I think it's pertinent and important based on what I see off the East Coast and what its impacts could be on our area. This is Mid-Atlantic weather update. It is Saturday. It is September 8th, 2018. Anyway, I hope you're doing well today. So there she is. She's spinning out there in the Atlantic, and she is definitely getting her act better together today. So Florence is currently a tropical storm. As of last advisory, she had winds of 65 miles per hour. There is a reconnaissance airplanes in there right now. We'll find out if she is strengthening or even weaker than what we think. As of now, it's 65 mile per hour is what we're seeing. She is overnight been kind of drifting west-southwest. That southwest or west kind of trajectory is something we're going to really have to watch over the next several days. And I'll explain what is influencing that in this video a little bit. Hopefully it'll help you. Let me know if you like this. Give me a thumbs up or some feedback if you could. That'd be great. So this is the first model outlook I'm looking at. Now, these spaghetti plots is what they call them. It's because you get multiple model outruns and output on the same plot here. And so what you're seeing is all those hurricane models plotted together. And you see a trajectory that looks like it's going to move towards the southeast coast. There are a few that are actually showing off the east coast. Now, these are the ones that are more the American-based models as their initiator. And I did see it's changing some of the tracks, showing this more easterly trajectory this morning. But I want to show you why in just a minute. So again, this hurricane track from the hurricane models. And here's the GFS tracks. GFS is the American model I mentioned. And as you can see here, as I noted, there are some hits now from this morning's run of the ensembles. Now, ensembles are a mixture of a whole bunch of different models run with the kind of the same program, but with different initiation pieces and maybe some slight variations in the model itself. This is good because it shows multiple plots. And the short term, what we call the global the actual main program is good to watch. So early on, you see there's a huge clustering around the actual main plot, which is this black line. Beyond that, once you get out to about 3 days or so, you're going to see a lot of variation, which is what you'll see in the hurricane tracking maps, which I'll show you in a minute. But this is just important to note. So you see these things a lot of times. The key is that there are a lot of different models running, and they're showing different types of trends. And the trend over multiple runs for this specific model had been further and further to the southwest. This last one kind of brought it a little more to the northeast. I would not be worried about anything beyond day 3 as far as specifics. What we can say is that the southeast coast, as we already know, is vulnerable to a hurricane strike. So that's what we know. And there is a glimmer, though it's small, that it could just get close to the coast and move out to sea. I think that idea, that exit, is getting less and less likely. But here you see a different model. This is a Canadian. I would not necessarily trust the Canadian model as a hurricane model. But again, we see this on their main forecast map, this black line. It also is showing more of an east. And it all has to do with something going on here in the northeast Atlantic and exactly how strong this Bermuda/Atlantic ridge, which you're going to hear a lot from weather forecasters over the next couple of days, really is and how far west it extends. So one last model cluster to look at, and that's the European. So here's a European map, and this one definitely looks a little more ominous for the southeast coast. What I can tell you is the European in general has just been constantly shifting further and further west and southwest. And based on the fact that the hurricane has moved towards the southwest, and you can see some clustering here of more of a west-southwestern cluster, you have to start to look at northern Florida, Georgia, South Carolina as a potential strike zone, as a possibility. The other has been more in this region. So a lot of interesting speculation. But again, once you get past, look, I mean, these are pretty tight. It gives you a pretty good sense of where things are going to go. Once you get to day 5, that spread just becomes bigger and bigger. Remember, a small trajectory difference makes a huge difference down the line. What I can tell you is if in any of these scenarios where things come on shore, at some point the storm looks like it's going to stall and eventually get shoved northeast. Where that happens and what exactly happens could mean just ridiculous amounts of flooding here in the Piedmont area, somewhere from Georgia up to the Virginia Piedmont, really, is what it looks like at this point. And we got to watch what's going on. Just to give you an idea, this was the output of the model from the European last night, and you can see these 7 and 8 inches, foot or more rain from this trajectory. Now, this is the main one model, the main European model showing the output of the rain. Yesterday, when it came up a little further north, there were pockets of ridiculous amounts of rain. Now, again, these are just trajectories. They're not forecasts. They're just showing potential for what could happen. Again, this is a European map, and the GFS would have looked much different. So we got to watch it today. And as I mentioned, your hurricane hunters are out there today, so we're going to look at what they said, hopefully right at the end here of this video. All right, so I did want to mention what was the factor. Now, this is an upper level, 500 millibars. That's really high up in the atmosphere. Kind of look at what's going on in steering the hurricane. I want to mention two things here. First of all, the longer the hurricane seems weak, the further west or even southwest this thing is going to move. It's going to get more influenced by winds than its own friction in the way in which it turns in the atmosphere. What I mean by that is if you ever know about a curveball or a spin that you do in tennis, changes the trajectory of the ball. So a curveball changes trajectory because of its spin. Think of the hurricane like a huge ball. And if it's not spinning very fast or have a big area where it's spinning against, it's not going to turn as hard or curve as hard. But the bigger it gets and the bigger it's stacked up in the atmosphere, the more it turns, it's going to actually gain some latitude. So the stronger this thing gets, the more possibility it has to gain some latitude. As of now, over the last 24 hours or even 36 hours, it's been a little weaker, so it's had less of a chance to spin more north and more of an influence of that westerly wind. As it gets stronger, it may have the ability to start to turn a little to the northeast. That's actually what the hurricane tracks you see in general. So that's just the hurricane itself. What's really going on, though, is there's a climatologically anomalous, whatever you want to call it, ridge to the northeast. This thing is going to strengthen pretty hard. How hard it strengthens, how far west it goes, is everything to do with where this hurricane is going to go. So this is a GFS, that American model, showed it kind of weakening more and allowing it to come into the North Carolina coast. And it's been doing that pretty regularly and pretty consistently, I should say. So something we have to watch. I think it may be a little underplaying the ridge. Then you have the European model, which may be overplaying the ridge. See here, it's actually got it going stronger and pushing way down south, even into the Georgia coast or South Carolina coast. So this is a stronger ridge. So which one's right? Well, it has everything to do with where the storm goes. And my suspicion is somewhere in between. So, I mean, it really puts a vulnerability here along the southeast North Carolina into the South Carolina, maybe northern Georgia area. But again, it's speculation. Once you get to beyond 3 days, hurricane tracks are notoriously ridiculously hard to track. I mean, in 3 days, they can even still be difficult to track. And one of the big things that's very hard to track is this intensity. So, I mean, I want to note that the water temperatures off the southeast coast are ridiculously warm, 85 to 90 degrees. And the fact that shear, which is the upper level winds that have been kind of blowing the hurricane to make it weaker the last several days, is going to lessen. So the storm can kind of get itself better together. Those things are going to all contribute to the fact that it's going to strengthen. But how strong it gets, again, hurricane intensity, especially several days out, very, very difficult to pinpoint. I'm going to show you something, but I'm going to say it's very much speculatory. It's what the hurricane models show. All of them are showing a very strong major hurricane, and that is something we probably should notice. It looks like it's going to be a major hurricane at this point in time. But realistically, how strong it comes on shore as will be something to note. If this thing's strengthening or continues at these really strong levels when it comes on shore, this is going to be a historic storm. And there's a lot of hype about that. I'm not trying to hype it up. I'm just saying we don't know much yet. We know a little more from these NOAA hurricane hunters, but please don't overdo the idea of what could happen here. And just to give you some ideas of how warm the water is right up against the coast. These temperatures right up against the coast can be warmer because the water's a little more shallow, but I mean, you see it really strongly in the mid 80s. You have the Gulf Stream, you have the just warm bodies of water. Fuel, not a problem for this storm. And so the last map I'm going to show here, these are the intensity scales. You can see it moving up, and there are several that are clustering up here to Category 4. There's some that are less, some that are strongly in the 4. The key thing is, like I said, once you get beyond day 3, you really get into speculation here. But most of them at day 3, again, are kind of pointing towards a strong Category 2 or 3. There is a chance that something could keep it weaker. I mean, if there's shear, there's something else going on that, again, these systems can be both fickle and suddenly become kind of weakened by things you don't expect, or become extremely strong when they go through what's called rapid intensification. Everything now points to rapid intensification. We'll have to see what happens. All right, so that's the last forecast map I want to show. Just giving you an idea, and not to raise over alarm, but this thing could be a pretty powerful storm in 3 to 5 days. And again, just remind you that once you get past day 3, the cone gets wider and wider and wider as far as where that storm could be. This center dot is what the best speculation could be as to where it could be, but realistically, that storm could be anywhere along this area here. It could be any place in there. So it could be as far north as here. The further north, the more maybe potential is going to curve. The further south, even if it curves, we've got land issues and stuff. So, but honestly, just to be honest, I would definitely say that anything from this region to me to about this region looks very worrisome to me at this point in time. Worrisome though, but you could have effects, as I mentioned, of flooding even further inland, especially the Piedmont areas. And a lot of these areas up here have just been saturated already. So that could mean really historic flooding if we're not careful. So my reality is that I think there's a lot to watch and there's a lot of concern. Hurricane hunters are in there now. Let me just look at it and see if I get any latest update, if anything's different, and I'll solve this out. Let me know if you like this. It's really long. I know 12 minutes is crazy long, but if you want to see more, let me know.